hilarious article from the New York Times, basically setting expectations. Let's go ahead and put this up there on the screen. Quote, Democrats fret as Stacey Abrams struggles in the Georgia governor's race. Here's my personal favorite line. It alarms Democrats who have celebrated her as the master strategist behind the state's Democratic shift. And they specifically point to the fact, Crystal, that Stacey Abrams is running behind Brian Kemp when Raphael Warnock is running far ahead of Herschel Walker. It wasn't supposed to be this way. Stacey Abrams was the heir apparent. She was anointed. She raised tens of millions of dollars. She was hailed as the mastermind. When in reality, here's what happened. Trump, this guy, you might have heard of him, was really unpopular in 2018. It led to more Democratic votes. He was further more of an idiot in 2020. That led to Raphael Warnock winning. He then even was more of an idiot and endorsed a guy named Herschel Walker, who is terrible. So now Warnock has a chance. Meanwhile, Brian Kemp is, well, he did win in 2018. And then he, kind of had his third way with Trump, won the Republican primary, also got some credibility with Democratic voters. And now the person who is supposedly the architect of all of this is losing. And they point to the fact that fundraising, polling-wise, and just her general inability none of it has showed up from a political scale that supposedly had existed almost, remember, she was almost floated as the vice presidential candidate for Joe Biden.
Remember when in
she
real
was
time
the first
on TV,
Kamala.
she realized she wasn't going to get the vice president?
And she was like,
Yeah.
Do you remember also when she was like, well, I'm a very smart lady, even though I have no experience in
She was outward.
affairs.
Yeah, she was auditioning. I mean, she was like outwardly auditioning.
She's like, well, I took a course once in college. I'm like, yeah, okay.
She probably would have done better than Kamala.
She probably would have
being
been.
honest. I think she is much more politically talented than
Correct.
Kamala, to be honest with
I
you.
agree. Although I still think she's terrible.
So, I mean, there's a couple things to say about this. I mean, first of all, I think the underlying dynamics of the race have less to do with Raphael Warnock and Stacey Abrams than they do with Herschel Walker and Brian Kemp.
Totally agree.
Kemp is an incumbent governor. The fact that he's an incumbent makes it harder, number one. Number two, he did, even though from a legislative perspective, he's been very, hard, right, conservative, he did have that break with Trump and, showed that he could be independent-minded. And I think that has helped him with independents and even some swing Democrats. They say in particular, Abrams is underperforming with black men. I mean, she's still winning 80% of black men. But last time around, she won 93% of black men. So that is one thing they're pointing to as an issue for her. So the fact that he's been able to maintain his own independence from Trump, he's relatively popular, he's an incumbent. Herschel Walker is walking disaster. That, to me, is the most important factor that explains the difference here. But part of why this is a big problem for her is because she had the whole Stacey Abrams mythology was about how she'd built this machine in Georgia to register voters and turn them out for Democrats in a way that it had never been done before. And Democrats tend to get obsessed with these sort of procedural or campaign mechanics rather than a policy agenda that's going to energize people to bring them out. And perfect contrast here is Trump in 2016, their campaign was a mess and a disaster, but he, for better or worse, in my opinion, worse, resonated with large view and brought out new voters that weren't voting in the past. So it's not so much about the mechanics of, are you registering and who are you and how is this all working? What does that operation look like? You got to have those mechanics in place. That helps. But you also have to have something that is motivating people to want to go and vote. Otherwise, it's you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink it. So her theory of the case that just having those mechanics without the overarching vision, message, material delivery for constituents, that you could just have those mechanics and that would be a success, that's being undermined by the fact that she is underperforming where Warnock is ultimately.
I completely agree with you on that one. But I just do think it's good to dispel the myth of Stacey Abrams and learn the hard lesson of politics, which is sometimes it does have to do with candidate quality, but a lot of the times it doesn't. And it has to do with much more multifaceted factors. And people like her build entire narratives. I mean, she's become a multimillionaire, basically grifting and selling these fake books. I mean, remember that thing I did about how she has a book on how to be a good manager in business?
Oh, yeah.
You've never run a business in your life. What are you talking about? Your greatest skill is raising $5 million from Michael Bloomberg for your charity.
That's
really what you're good at.
That was the thing that always,
Right.
she was the perfect case in point of like the just celebrity coverage approach to politics.
100%.
There was zero analysis of like, what does she actually stand for?
Yep.
What did she actually do in the Georgia legislature? It was all this very sort of, it was like TMZ, only for politics and elevating Stacey Abrams. So anyway, it is I was a little bit surprised she even ran for governor because to me it was very predictable that it would be a very tough slog and a much harder road than it was last time around, just facing an incumbent governor in a more difficult year. So I was kind of surprised that she went for it, but I guess in some ways, having not gotten pulled into the Biden administration, it was her only move.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Cable news is ripping us apart, dividing the country, making it impossible to function as a society, and making it impossible to know just what is true and what is false. But the good news is they are failing and they know it.
That is why we're building something new, a new mainstream, a healthier one, something more trustworthy, something that we are going to need in one of the most pivotal times in American history. We are building up here for the midterms, for the upcoming presidential election, but we need your help. So if you can help us out by becoming a premium member today at breakingpoints.com, we're trying to change America for the better and the entire world.
So what are you waiting for, guys? Go to breakingpoints.com and sign up and help us build a new mainstream.